أسعد به قلوبنا واغفر به ذنوبنا واشرح به صدورنا يا ربنا. أذهب به أحزاننا فرج به همومنا واجعله شاهدا لنا يا ربنا. هو القرآن والفرقان إليه تنصت الأكوان وفيه تعطر الآذان والقرآن.
When I first started, I never had the intention of even memorizing. Like, what happened is I remember my senior year of high school, subhanAllah, this is something that I fell into it. Like, what happened was my senior year of high school, that Ramadan, there was certain sin, certain shortcoming that I won't mention out of just shame, really, but something I was really, really struggling with through probably all of high school. And that Ramadan came around, and I don't know why, but for whatever reason, Allah Ta'ala put it in my heart to leave this thing. And so that Ramadan, right, Ramadan we know is a month of change. It's a month of improving ourselves. It's the month of the Quran. This time that I needed to do something to keep myself busy, I started revising Quran. My parents had started me on Quran, hifz, tajweed, all of these things, nazira, reading. And it never really clicked for me as a kid. I never understood, why I was doing any of this. But then in high school, in this Ramadan, my senior year, so this is 2018, about 4 years ago, Allah Ta'ala just put it into my heart to review Juz Amma, the last Juz of the Quran, the surahs that most of us know. That's when I really started to connect with the Quran. And this kind of coincided with the time where Sheikh Ismail was moving into our community. And so he would come a few nights, I believe Monday and Thursday nights, to come and lead Isha. I didn't know him at the time, so I was actually really scared of him. But I approached him and I said, I want to just recite Quran properly in my salah, and I want to just revise that. So he said, okay, what do you have memorized? And I said, just Juz Amma, but I forgot it. I don't really know it too well. And he said, okay, let's just start there from the back. Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas, and keep going. So we started, and I would recite what I knew. I wasn't just reading, I was reciting these things that I had memorized. And I kept going and I kept going. And eventually I finished Juz Amma. And so I continued with Juz Tabarak, the 29th Juz of the Quran. I just kept going. And even up until that point, you could, I didn't have, I'd never had this in my mind that, I want to become Hafiz and I want to, do this. I want to, I never had my aspirations that high. That stuff was, a dream, but not one that I thought I would really attain. And so, just one thing after the other. I got half of the Quran done, and then I was like, this is cool, but I'm not gonna finish. And it wasn't until maybe 6 months ago or so where I was like, okay, this is actually possible. I could actually, get that step, do my first khatam, start my next one, and memorize the Book of Allah, review and consolidate the Book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So something that really I fell into. I don't know why. To me, as far as I understand, and maybe some people have thought about this, maybe you've thought about this just as I've been talking about it, that this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the hadith Qudsi, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that you come to him walking and he comes to you running. And so Allah ta'ala, this is exactly what I felt like it was. I took that first step to change, and there was effort on every step of the way. I did have it in my mind that I wanted to finish the Quran by the time I finished, college. That was there as a goal, as a dream. But I've always been kind of a more pessimistic person. So I was like, I'm not going to get there. It's not going to happen. Which is wrong of me to think, but it's how I thought, going through this process. And so I did have it in my mind. I did have that plan that, I do want to memorize the Book of Allah, and I want to get it done by this point. So that was there to clarify, but from just a standpoint of the day-to-day, I wasn't really thinking about that because it was many years off. And it was just I didn't know. This is my first experience with the Quran, right? So in terms of memorizing, so I didn't know how long will it take. The Quran is such a long journey that people take. And so the thing that helped me most, by far, more than anything, was the connection that I kept with Sheikh Ismail. I would see him 6-7 days a week whether it was just praying behind him, whether it was class, whether it was catching up with him, and just talking about how things were going. And that was, I think, single-handedly the thing that allowed me to keep going, because every day I was reminded of what it meant to love the Quran. I was reminded of what it meant to connect with the Quran. I was reminded of what my goal was. And so this is like the number one thing, that if someone, if I was just to try to do hifz on my own and not take on a teacher, first off, I wouldn't learn it properly, but also on top of that, I wouldn't get very far. Because this connection that you build with a teacher, it's not just you read to them, they correct your mistakes, and it's just some exchange of information. That's part of it, right? That you learn the rules of tajweed, you correct your mistakes, and you get better as you go. But the deeper thing that you get, and perhaps some would consider it more important, is that you begin to develop this deep love, this connection with the Quran, the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You start to see how it changes you in your own life, and you get to share those experiences with your teacher, and they will remind you from time to time about how lucky you are that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose you to memorize His book. And from this perspective, this is the number one thing that I felt like every time I prayed behind him, every time I recited to him, there was a certain love that was deep-seated and would continue to be built in my heart, and still now. This is exactly what I would tell people as well who are struggling from their perspective of their istiqamah, their steadfastness in memorizing the Quran, or even if they're not memorizing, just reading the Quran, or just having a daily portion of Quran that they read. That I would say that we know this, that the Prophet ﷺ says that a man is on the deen, on the way, on the religion of his friend, right? And so everyone should look to who they befriend. And so this is exactly the same thing. The same principle comes into play, that if you want to have that deep connection, daily connection with the Quran, love for the Quran, then the best way you're going to get it is not by cracking open books of tafsir, not by just trying to read it on your own and watch videos. No, I mean, that stuff can supplement, right? That has its place, of course. But the number one thing is that you keep the suhbah, the companionship of the people who love the Quran. These are going to be our teachers, the people who have memorized the Quran, who have given their life for the Quran, that a number of people have memorized the Quran at their feet. Then these are the people that you will, inshallah, get that from as well. And so that was what it was for me, right? That the Quran is there's so many ups and downs. It's such a long journey, and by me doing all of this doesn't mean that my journey is over. Every step of the way that you get closer to the Quran, you fall more in love with the Quran, right? It's like an endless pit. Nobody can just say that, oh, I love the Quran, and that's it. No. You can love the Quran more. You can love Allah Ta'ala more. You can love the Prophet ﷺ more. And you can keep growing that connection. And so this is what I would say to people, that if you have friends who don't care about the Quran, if you keep the company of people who don't care about the Quran, and then you wonder why you can't memorize it, why you have no motivation to memorize it, well, this is why. That you need to find the people who love the Quran. And I'm not talking about myself. I can't emphasize that enough. I'm not one of those people. Inshallah, may Allah grant me tawfiq to be one of them. May Allah grant us tawfiq to be one of them. But it's something that these people who have given their life for the Quran, who have that love, that when you recite, you feel it in your heart. This connection there, that effect, when they recite, it's not just on their heart, but on your heart as well. That you find these people and you talk with them, you build a friendship with them, because everything that I've gone through, Shaykh Ismail either has gone through it or knows someone that went through it. And so it became very easy that all I had to do, just put in the effort, keep putting in the effort, and then everything else, will just fall into place. Any low I had, from life, and just sometimes stuff just hits people. It happens. Stuff happens, and our lives are not perfect. They can get very muddy. And so in those moments that you can go to your teacher, in the moments of happiness that you have your teacher, and you share those moments with them, and you have moments of sadness, you have moments of grief, you have moments of intense struggle, you have moments where you get disciplined or you get put in your place, you have moments where your teacher honors you. If we really understood, and I don't claim to have that understanding, but if we really even understood a fraction of what this book is, this ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this rahmah that He has given us, and how little that we utilize it, right? And this goes for everyone, hafiz or not, qari or not, that we should stop and think that if I really believe this is the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wouldn't I be willing to give so much for it? Wouldn't I be willing to sacrifice time for it and connect with it and hope to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through it? Is the effort that you put in. There are some people who they have such deep love for the Quran, but they're not able to even read it because they maybe converted at an old age, or it was never there for them for whatever reason, and they couldn't learn. That's a different case, and who knows, maybe Allah Ta'ala will have more love for them, or more, maybe Allah Ta'ala will accept them over Hafiz because of their love of the Quran. There's no secret ingredient, honestly. Like, it's really just most people will learn by experience, like myself, that you will have very high aspirations and then it'll all come crashing down, and you will revisit it and have high aspirations again, maybe a little bit less, and you won't think that they're high aspirations, and then it'll come crashing down, and then it'll happen again and again until eventually you will learn that saddidu wa qaribu, that you just take small steps. You'll never be perfect in your memorization routine or whatever, right? But you will just slowly inch towards your goal, right? The goal isn't perfection, right? At the end of the day, the goal is that you work and you get closer and closer to your goal, and you keep doing that, until you keep making that mujahada, that striving, that effort, all the way up until your last breath. This applies even to the person who has memorized the Quran, or has a very deep connection with the Quran, 40 years of reciting the Quran, whatever. It's not over, till it's over. Because the whole goal, at the end of the day, is that a person dies in a state that is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A person dies on La ilaha illallah. A person dies with the Quran in their heart. A person dies with acceptance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah ta'ala has accepted this from them and is pleased with them because of it, and will reward them in full because of what they did. That's the goal. And so you won't, from that perspective, the long term is you will never ever reach a point where you experience it, until you pass away. And so if you keep your head focused on that as well, that's one thing that helped me, that Allah ta'ala can take you at any moment. So in this moment, I need to make sure that I'm in a state of memorizing the Quran. I'm in a state of loving the Quran. I'm in a state of, where Allah Ta'ala is pleased with me. Because you never know. There's no guarantee that you will live to see your hifz khatam. There's no guarantee that you will live to lead tarawih or whatever. There's no guarantee of any of it. But the one thing that's guaranteed for us is maut, is death. So that you die in a state where, perhaps there are people who, may Allah protect us, people who have memorized the Quran, and then they passed away without the Quran in their heart, that they memorized it when they were young, or whatever, and then at some point they forgot it, or they lost their connection with the Quran. And at that point, right, forgetting the Quran is a big sin. And so they will, may Allah protect us, but perhaps they will meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a state that Allah ta'ala is angry with them. And so it's the same thing for us, that you think about this stuff. You think about, the future, and you plan things out. Nobody's saying not to plan. Do that. I did that. Everyone does that. But when it comes to the day-to-day affairs, understand that the trust is not in the plan, it's in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That, my plan, I went through this myself, that, I made this perfect plan, and it just I counted for everything, and it just didn't work. And that's when you have to stop. And I had to stop and think, was my faith, did I put my tawakkul, my trust in the plan, or did I put it in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because all of this, it's only by the tawfiq of Allah that one letter of the Quran we're even able to recite is not because, I'm so pious, that look at me, I can read from the Quran and so can't, or look at me, I'm memorizing the Quran and so. It's not about that. It's that Allah Ta'ala gave you the tawfiq, the ability, the futuhat, the opening to connect with the Quran of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And if you don't, realize that, then it's very possible that Allah Ta'ala just takes the gift away from you entirely. There's so many examples of times where I went through such a low that, I was like, I'm just gonna stop here. I don't want to keep going. And it's in those moments that, like, I remember when I would go to Shaykh Ismail, like I said before, I talked about having a deep connection with the person of the Quran, that's so important. So that's the first thing. No matter what your issue is, that's what your teacher is there for. That's what having your murabbi, the one who will do your tarbiyah, who will nurture you, that's what they're there for. So that's the first thing. No matter what your issue is, these people who have taught Quran for their entire lives, like odds are, unless you're some like special case, that they've dealt with it in some capacity before. And even if they haven't, they're going to know better how to deal with it than yourself, easily. And that's the first thing. And then the second thing I would say is that there are times where you might have to take a step back from memorizing. You might have to close the mushaf. And so at first thought, you're like, what is he talking about? Like, isn't consistency the name of the game? It is. But there are times where just like you have to step away so that you can come back stronger, say in a sport where you just have to take a step back, let the injury heal, and then come back into the game. It's the same thing, that you need to start making some dhikr, make some dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That this is anything, anytime the ugly thought comes to you that I want to leave this pursuit, or I'm not happy with this ni'mah, Allah protect us from thinking like this. But that you stop, you make dua, sincere dua, you reaffirm your intention, you make some istighfar. Perhaps it's some of your sins that have led you to think like this or have led to this block. So you ask Allah, Ya Allah, forgive me. Ya Allah, do not deprive us of your book. You send salawat on the Prophet ﷺ, on the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, and then you take that time and then you come back to it, right? Because if you're at that point where you're at such a low, like myself sometimes, where reading the Quran just becomes you just become frustrated because I can't get it. No problem. Close it. Make some dua. Leave it for some time. Enjoy yourself for a little bit, with the intention that I'm going to come back and get right back on this the moment that I can do it.